My Hero Academia, the anime sensation that took over our screens back in 2016. MHA dropped right in the middle of the superhero craze with movies like Civil War and Doctor Strange releasing in the same year. The MCU was still at its peak and interest in the superhero genre only seemed to be growing. Unfortunately, over the years MHA lost popularity due to some disappointing arcs. Season 6 however has brought many old fans out of the woodwork, and as an old fan who fell out of love with the show, I'm here to find out if My Hero Academia is finally good again. So the last thing I watched was season 3, so I had 3 seasons and all the movies to watch. Season 3 was actually one of my favourite seasons, so I was excited to go into season 4. Overhaul was an interesting villain and would have benefited from some more episodes. Seeing Muriel lose his powers was heartbreaking to see. The animation was good too. I saw people complaining about the slideshow at the end, but apparently that wasn't even in the manga, so I wasn't too annoyed by it. Seeing Deku be one of the most capable there while amongst actual pro heroes was so cool. It was a nice progression of his character, and seeing him actually do stuff instead of relying on pro heroes really demonstrates his growth. All in all, I enjoyed the Overhaul arc, and I think when I originally dropped it, it was just probably due to fatigue more than anything else. The soundtrack, while amazing in quality, feels somewhat overused at this point. There were certain moments with characters that I didn't really give a fuck about, and they still used the same amazing Yusei Run track, and I feel like it kind of cheapened it a little bit. And unlike the long-running shows of the past that somewhat struggled with this issue of like overused soundtracks, My Hero Academia doesn't really have the excuse because it's a seasonal show. I wish there were more themes and they had a higher variety of tracks to use. My Hero Academia has all the production value in the world, and every character gets a variation of the Yusei Run track, and it's just kind of hard for it to hit emotionally on the 40th time. All in all, it was a good arc, and I'm looking forward to see what comes next. I remember people taking the piss out of this when it first started airing. I think this is the first real start of the My Hero Academia hate train, because this is really when I started seeing people actually shit on the show. I expected it to be terrible, and I'd be lying if I said it was. Gentle was kind of corny, but while he was a little corny, he was actually a pretty interesting character. The concept of a failed hero trying to gain notoriety by breaking into UA undetected and filming it is a cool concept and engaging enough. I'm sure for people who love these characters, it was an enjoyable arc. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I understand if you liked it. Now this is what I wanted from My Hero Academia. Complex character relationships, lit fights, fun character interactions, and this arc had it all. Endeavour dealing with the fact that he's now the #1 hero is such a treat. He has to face the reality that he's accomplished his goal but hurt all the people in his life to the point where even the public don't like him that much. As the #1 hero replacing All Might, the hole that the last symbol of peace left in society is immense, as is the pressure that comes with trying to fill it. Hawks is a great character that's introduced into this arc. His powers are unique and he's competent. I like the feather quirk, and I feel like they can do some real creative fights with that skill set. Seeing him interact with Endeavour and work together was nice, and I hope we get to see more of that in season 5. Endeavour is a great character, flawed and fascinating. To be honest, he's a much better character to focus on than Deku right now, and if they keep this up, I can see season 5 being just as good as the first few seasons. Here's hoping. My thoughts after the start of season 5 was that the story needs to progress more. We're 5 seasons deep and they're still in their first year. Like, come on man. The story shines best when we feel like it's progressing, whether that's work studies or Endeavour and Hawks fighting villains in the real world. After finishing on the high of season 4 with Hawks and Endeavour fighting the new high in Nomu, to go straight into a Class A vs B arc was underwhelming as hell, man, and the momentum just got slowed down to a halt. The new music was nice, and I'm glad we're getting some new shit to listen to, because it was starting to get a bit repetitive, so that was good to see or hear. The song that played during episode 10 when Deku lost control of his quirk, and the orchestral version of Yusei Run in episode 11 were standouts. Class A vs Class B was cool, I didn't hate the arc. It was nice to see the development of Bakugo, but outside of that, I don't have much to say about it really. MHA isn't the best at developing side characters, so when they do focus on them, it's kinda boring. A lot of padding, somewhat slow pacing, still frames, etc. Somewhat reminiscent of the old long running animes when they would pad out the episodes with that type of filler, so I'm not the biggest fan of that, even though I am nostalgic for those type of animes. The difference is MHA is seasonal, so it's hard to kind of give it that same pass. I don't really know why we're seeing that when it's a 24 episode season. The arc overall wasn't as bad as I heard, but it wasn't very enjoyable, man, and just kind of mediocre. This was the arc I was looking forward to the most. I think Endeavour is the most compelling character in the show right now. He's complex, and his relationship with his family, All Might, the #1 hero position, and how they develop is honestly in My Hero Academia at its best. And the icing on top of the cake is that Todoroki goes with Bakugo and Deku, so we get to see them all train with the #1 hero. That's just peak shit right there. It was all around an enjoyable arc, and the only complaints I have that it was a little too short and I wish it wasn't cut off so abruptly. This arc just seems like wasted potential. I heard it was better in the manga and there was some weird shit with the way they like split up the pacing and I heard the arc before or after was meant to come before, something like that. And you kind of feel it. They spoiled the ending before it even started, so I wasn't ever worried that Shigaraki would lose. Bones has been pretty good at adapting material, so I'll be surprised if that's true. I'm an anime only, so manga readers let me know in the comments. Seeing villains fight each other is pretty cool, since that's the only time the show seems to get dark and actually like murder people. It was a nice change of pace rooting for Shigaraki, and after seeing his backstory and his development in this arc, I definitely like him a bit more as a villain. It's a shame that the ending was spoiled in the arc due to the weird flashback shit, but it was still pretty good, and I'm interested to see where the story goes now that Shigaraki is so powerful with the Paranormal Liberation front. I just wish they didn't do it the way they did. Like if you just cut out that beginning of the arc, I feel like the arc is just so much better and it actually has tension. This season was definitely a mixed bag to say the least. Great ideas but questionable execution, and I understand why it's one of the least liked amongst fans. I feel like the source material they had for this was good, but surprisingly Bones seems to kind of fuck it up. The animation with the Class A, Class B stuff, the pacing with the Endeavour arc, and then the Shigaraki My Villain Academia thing spoiling at the beginning, it just seems like a shambles of an adaptation, I'm not gonna lie. So definitely my least favorite of the new season so far, and hopefully season 6 is better. After season 5, I needed a little break from the main storyline. I wanted to be reminded of how great My Hero Academia can look like animation wise, so I decided to finally watch the movies. My Hero Academia 2 Heroes. I didn't enjoy this movie as much as the later ones, so I won't stay on it too much. It was nice seeing young All Might and his friend in America. I like that they gave Deku the armband so that we could see him at full power besides All Might. Seeing them fight together was cool. I'm not a big fan of the CGI vomit as a final villain in these anime movies. Demon Slayer did it as well on the Mugen Train, even though he wasn't the final villain because Akuza eventually pulled up. But I really don't like the CGI. I don't know why Japan do that, like the CGI vomit shit at the end. A lot of the class also got shafted in this one and didn't do much. An okay movie, but not one I enjoyed too much personally. Moving on. Heroes Rising. This one was much better than the last, in my opinion. First, we get to see the kids doing regular hero stuff, and it was nice to see them do wholesome work. I preferred this as a change of pace than the festival arc. The villain is cool and his lieutenants are powerful with fun designs. We get to see the entire class do stuff this time, and everyone had their roles. The standouts for me were definitely Ida, Todoroki, Tokoyami, and Ochako, but everyone played their parts. Seeing Bakugo and Deku actually work together and not compete for once was so satisfying. Their powers actually complement each other pretty well, which is cool. Todoroki did feel a little underpowered because I always got the impression that he was the strongest of the three, at least at this point, but maybe the Chimera guy was just that strong, so who knows. I didn't mind Deku giving his quirk to Bakugo at the end since it's a movie and it's so fun, but I wish they let Bakugo remember. That felt pretty contrived. They're never gonna address it in the mainline story anyway, so they made him forget, but wouldn't Deku talk to him about it? It felt very, this is a filler so we can't affect the status quo. And if it's a filler, I would love them to just lean into it and just have outlandish shit like Deku giving his power to Bakugo happen, because it's not canon anyway. I don't really know what the canon or filler state of these movies are. If they are meant to be canon, then I guess it kind of makes sense, but I feel like that held back the movie a little. And this one might be a weird complaint, but I feel like they might have overdid it a little with the animation in the final fight. Like, don't get me wrong, it looked beautiful, but it was hard to follow at times and just felt like they were focused on the motion too much without sparing any for the detail. Sometimes less is more, and in this case I feel like it would definitely look better if they just pulled back a little. Apart from that though, it was a very fun movie and I wish I watched it in the cinema. I feel like seeing Bakugo get one for all in the cinema would have been crazy, and those audience reactions must have gone off. Much better than the first one, and I hope the next one is as good if not better. World's Hero Mission. Or World's Heroes Mission. This was a fun movie, the character designs were cool and the animation was great. Seeing the variety of powers showcased was interesting, and the Bakugo fight was my favourite. Outside of that, honestly, there isn't much to say. It's an MHA movie, so you get what you expect. At this point, these movies kind of follow a formula, and yeah, you know, it was alright. It wasn't anything offensive. It wasn't anything spectacular. It was just like a fun summer flick, kind of like a Mission Impossible movie. Like, you don't go in there for the story, you go in there for the oohs and the ahs. You know what I'm saying? The explosions and stuff. Great animation and action with fun character interaction. R.I.P. Exless. The drip you bestowed upon Shigaraki will never be forgotten. I was so excited to watch this season. I heard good things about it, and a lot of people were saying it's the best season since like season 2 or 3. I hope that I enjoyed the season, but I really didn't. It wasn't bad per se, but I don't think it was really good either. I try not to be too negative, but man, I really don't like the writing style of My Hero Academia. Horikoshi isn't the best at foreshadowing things in my opinion, so a lot of the power-ups and twists don't feel earned. The show has a problem with the way they do it. They retroactively develop stuff, so they'll show a new ability and then show a flashback afterwards, and I'm just not a fan of that style of storytelling. It makes it hard for me to feel invested in these moments. The show also never has that oh shit moment. It feels like there are no stakes in this world really. And even when shit is going down, it feels somewhat watered down and a little less mature. For example, the way they handle deaths is just kinda it's like how cartoons used to do it when we were kids. Midnight died off screen, and due to the existence of Recovery Girl, anytime a character was hurt, I would question whether or not they'd actually die. When characters are getting impaled and stabbed and stuff, I really didn't find it that intense. I'm also not a fan of Deku's new powers. They intrinsically ruin the focus of the character in my opinion. The story until now is about Deku mastering a very powerful quirk. He's gone from being barely able to use 45% of his original quirk without hurting himself to now using several other abilities with no downsides pretty much, and with only the primary antagonist being able to pose a threat to him. For all the show's attempts to convey that message that no one should work alone and teamwork makes the dream work, Deku is one of the few characters capable of having an effect on anything by this point. Kinda like the end of Shippuden devolving into the Naruto and Sasuke show. With the introduction of the new powers, Deku is now broken. The power scaling is thrown completely off, and I can't help but think this is due to wanting to end the series as quick as possible. The fact that the kids are still in their first year in season 6 is insane. The characters are too one track and good. They never struggle in terms of their ideology. It's too simple. Everyone's just sure that the heroes are right and they've never done anything wrong, and there's no nuance. Don't get me wrong, I get why people still like the show. I'm not trying to say it's absolute dog shit like some people are saying out there, and there are enjoyable moments. And if I was more invested than I am, I would probably love the season way more. Unfortunately, I'm just not that invested anymore. I just don't care about the characters, and the stuff that does manage to wheel me back in, like Endeavour and Hawks, aren't the focus of the show. Deku and Shigaraki's / All For One are. The show isn't garbage by any means, but I don't enjoy watching it anymore, and I really won't be watching it moving forward. I might, check back in once it's all said and done just to see how it ends, but I don't think I'll be watching it season by season anymore. I've had my fun with My Hero Academia, but it's time to move on to something a little more my taste.